being baptized down at the foot of the bridge. The dike is there now, but we used to cut right down there and go right to the river.
As a child, Betty Cobb found salvation along the banks of the Tar River. As an adult, those same muddy waters had brought her tremendous heartache, taking her home not once, but twice. So why did she stay?
It was the love for Princeville, for the town itself, my roots.
Incorporated in 1885, Princeville, North Carolina claims the distinction of being the oldest town in the nation chartered by African Americans.
Our forefathers built a town out of absolutely nothing but swampland. They shed their blood, sweat, and tears on these sacred grounds.
The settlement, first known as Freedom Hill, grew up around a Union Army camp on the south bank of the Tar River, where escaped slaves sought protection in the waning days of the Civil War. Mayor Bobby Jones says the founders chose the low-lying site because it was all the former slaves could afford.
It was absolutely worthless. Nobody wanted it. Nobody could see anything positive for the future of the swampland.
Instead, Princeville thrived, surviving attempts by majority white Tarboro across the river to have its charter revoked. But there's one force Princeville could not hold back: rising floodwaters, despite construction of a massive levee in the 1960s. And experts say climate change will only bring stronger and more frequent storms.
When it floods and the water level rises and starts to come over the bank, the water wants to go somewhere, and it wants to naturally go where the town of Princeville currently exists.
Princeville has flooded many times since its founding. But Hurricane Floyd in 1999 was an existential crisis.
When Floyd came, it seemed like the end of the world.
84-year-old Alex Noble's house, about a mile from the river, had several feet of water inside.
It seemed like you just would turn outdoors, you know, everything was wide open.
In 2016, the Army Corps of Engineers unveiled plans to extend the town's levee, raise roads, and install floodgates on culverts. Not long after that announcement, Hurricane Matthew struck. The new home that Betty Cobb and her husband Clarence built after Floyd had water damage halfway up the walls.
The first time was devastating. And the second time, I don't even know if I can describe it.
In 2019, Congress authorized nearly $40 million to fund the Princeville flood protection upgrades.
And here we are in 2022, and yet the plows are still not in the ground.
Colonel Benjamin A. Bennett says updated computer modeling showed that the Princeville plan would have created flooding issues in other areas.
We said, hey, we need to look at that. We need to come up with a better design or see what we could do to try and make sure that we can still protect the citizens of Princeville without creating unintended consequences elsewhere.
But Bennett says nothing the Corps does will guarantee Princeville won't flood again. And so, the historic town is embracing that future. The Senior Citizen Center was rebuilt atop sturdy brick arches, well above historic flood levels. And work recently began on the first of more than 6 elevated homes. The town has purchased 2 tracts of land outside the traditional flood zone for residential and commercial development, just off the future route of Interstate 87.
We talked about a truck stop, a hotel, and as many businesses that we can get out here so that we'll catch the traffic off the expressway.
Today, very little remains of historic Princeville. The latest census puts the town's population at 1,254, a steep decline from a decade earlier. The government has purchased about 24 flood-prone properties for demolition, with more buyouts pending. Alex Noble is betting on Princeville's future.
You know, we shouldn't give up. You know, we didn't come this far to turn around.
But at 74, Betty Cobb isn't sure she has the strength to rebuild a third time.
Heavy rain come, you get a little afraid, and you hear of it flooding in other places. Right now, we're living on chance and prayer.
Alan Breed, Associated Press, Princeville, North Carolina.